There's a $1 stick of chalk that stops ants cold. And the pest control industry has spent 50 years making sure you never connected that fact to the $22 billion they collect every year. One line, $1, seconds, not almost as effective as what Raid sells you, not comparable to what Terminix charges $400 a year to apply. Measurably, provably better at the one thing that actually matters, stopping ants before they enter. A study published in the Journal of Chemical Ecology confirmed the mechanism in 2010. Scientific reports confirmed a second layer of it in 2017, 2 peer-reviewed papers. Not a single pest control company has ever mentioned either one. They did not forget this existed. That would be an accident. They buried it. That was not an accident. It was a decision. This is the story of chalk and why a 3,200-year-old solution was never supposed to reach you. Welcome back to Survive Better, where we open the vaults. Hit subscribe and the bell if you are not already in. In 1200 BCE, in the grain storage districts of the Yellow River Valley, Chinese households were drawing lines. Ground calcium carbonate, the same mineral compound pressed into white classroom sticks today, applied at door frames and grain store thresholds. The grain survived. The knowledge survived with it for 40 generations. Not because it was written into a manual, because it worked every single time someone used it. 4,000 miles away, at almost exactly the same historical moment, Egyptian households were applying mineral powder barriers at their own grain storage thresholds. 2 civilizations, 0 contact, same solution. Both arrived there by watching the same ant behavior, the hesitation, the reversal, the broken column, and both kept using it for the same reason. That is not coincidence. That is the same biology, observed independently on opposite sides of the world. But here's the part nobody tells you, and this is where it gets interesting. The solution they were using was not permanent. They knew that. They drew the line again the next day, and the day after. And they did it anyway, for 40 generations, because a line drawn every morning costs nothing and works every time. Hold that thought. Because the industry that replaced this knew exactly what they were doing when they convinced you that temporary was inferior. The whole business model depends on you believing that. In 2010, David Suckling's team at the New Zealand Institute for Plant and Food Research published their findings on ant trail disruption in the Journal of Chemical Ecology. Here is the mechanism, stripped down to what you actually need to understand it. Ants navigate by laying an invisible chemical highway, pheromones, deposited in nanogram quantities by scout workers. Every ant that follows reinforces the signal. A faint suggestion becomes a highway. A highway becomes the entire colony's food supply route. Chalk powder, calcium carbonate, hits that system in 2 places at once. It physically absorbs and masks the pheromone molecules already on the surface, and it disrupts the tactile sensing ants use as a backup when the chemical trail is weak. Within seconds of hitting a chalk line, ants show what researchers described as little or no further evidence of trail-following behavior. The column fractures. Individual ants stop. Some stand motionless. Then they turn around. Both navigation systems gone simultaneously from $1 of calcium carbonate. Now here is the pivot. Because this is the moment the pest control industry's argument enters the room. And it sounds reasonable until you look at who is making it. The industry will tell you chalk is temporary. And they are right. Ants adapt. They reroute. They redraw their trail around the disruption. The chalk needs to be redrawn. And here's the question that argument is designed to prevent you from asking. What does redrawn cost? Most people walk past this solution every single day without any idea what it can do. The ones who find out tend to make sure the people they care about find out too. So why has no pest control company ever mentioned chalk? Not in a brochure, not in a service call, not in a product label. Here is what a $22 billion industry looks like. Raid, SC Johnson Ortho, Spectrum Brands Taro, Spectrum Brands Terminix, Rentokil Initial Orkin, Rollins and Gowan Amdro, Central Garden, and Pet. You cannot patent calcium carbonate. You cannot trademark a chalk line. You cannot build a quarterly service contract around something that costs $3 a year. You cannot charge annual renewal fees for a mineral compound that predates Rome. You cannot create customer dependency on something every parent in America already owns. So the industry does not compete with chalk. It does something far more effective. It reframes chalk. It calls chalk temporary, which is true, and lets that truth do the work of making you forget the question you should be asking. The question is not whether chalk is permanent. Nothing in pest control is permanent. Raid washes off in rain. Ortho perimeter treatments degrade in sunlight. Terminix service contracts require quarterly return visits precisely because their chemistry does not last either. The question is cost. A chalk line redrawn every morning costs less than a fraction of a cent per day. A quarterly service contract costs between $400 and $800 per year. Both require reapplication. One requires a technician with a license and a sprayer and a recurring billing arrangement. The other requires 30 seconds and a stick that costs $1. The industry did not bury chalk by lying about it. They buried it by letting one true fact, it is temporary, crowd out every other relevant fact. That is not oversight. That is architecture. Deliberate and sustained. Now, here is exactly what to do with chalk. One item. White blackboard chalk only, not colored sidewalk chalk, which is gypsum and will not work. White blackboard chalk is calcium carbonate. Any dollar store, $1 per stick, $2 to $3 for a box of 12 at any school supply or discount retailer. Step 1. Find every entry point at or near ground level, door thresholds, windowsills, gaps around pipes, cracks in baseboards near the kitchen. You are mapping the ants' access points, not reacting to where you last saw them. Step 2. Press the chalk flat against the surface and draw a firm line approximately 1 centimeter wide across each entry point. Press hard enough to deposit visible powder, not just a line. The powder on the surface is the active element. Step 3. For exterior thresholds, drag the chalk in both directions to build up a powder layer. Not one stroke, a layer. Watch for the column fracturing within minutes. Individual ants will stop, circle, and reverse. Some will stand motionless for several seconds before retreating. That pause, that moment of navigational confusion, is the process working. If you see no results after 24 hours, check 3 things. First, confirm calcium carbonate chalk, not gypsum sidewalk chalk. They look identical and only one works. Second, check for moisture. Rain, cleaning, or a wet threshold destroys the powder layer and requires a fresh application. Third, check for alternate entry points. Ants reroute when blocked. A single line on one threshold is not a perimeter. One critical safety note that the industry will never tell you because it helps them and hurts you. There's a product called miraculous chalk or Chinese chalk, an illegal insecticide chalk that looks physically identical to school chalk, but contains deltamethrin. It is imported, unlicensed, and the EPA has linked it to child poisoning cases. Buy domestic only. Dollar stores, school supply sections, clearly labeled English packaging. If the label has characters you cannot read, do not bring it into a home with children or pets. $3 a year versus $800 in quarterly contracts, both requiring reapplication. Only one requiring a technician. Chinese households drew this line 3,200 years ago. Peer-reviewed researchers confirmed the mechanism in 2010, and a $22 billion industry has spent decades making sure the word temporary arrived, before any of the other facts did. This knowledge did not disappear. Someone made sure it stayed buried. And now you know exactly how they did it. Not with a lie, but with a fraction of the truth delivered first. What else do you think got buried the same way? Drop it in the comments. If this video opens something for you, subscribe now. The next vault opens soon. What is inside is even heavier than this.